Welcome to the Archive Room, the stories behind the footage.
Okay, so welcome to the Archive Room, the stories behind the footage. My name is Dominic Dare, and this is my co-host Sandra Coelho.
Hello.
Welcome. So today on the Archive Room, we're thrilled to welcome Andy Gavaghan, head of the ITV Archive and Content Library. Andy oversees one of the UK's most significant broadcast archives, managing everything from legacy film reels to digital assets. His work ensures that decades of iconic TV aren't just preserved, but remain accessible and alive for producers, researchers, and audiences alike. So, Andy, we're delighted to have you here today. Thanks ever so much for joining us.
A pleasure.
So, for people that don't know, can you just give us a really quick overview of what is the archive facility for ITV? Where is it? What does it look like?
Yeah, sure. For those people that don't know, ITV dates back to around 1955, to the kind of birth of commercial TV in the UK. And initially it was a whole host of regional companies, first kind of broadcasting in the London area and then kind of extrapolating out across England and Wales, and around 20 years ago started to, first of all, we amalgamated as a company. So all these different regional companies over the years, over quite a long period of time, kind of merged into becoming ITV. And I think it was 2004 that was the kind of final kind of merger between Carlton and Granada, two large kind of players in that kind of regional space, merged, and we became ITV as we know it today. And then very shortly after that, we began centralizing the archive service into this building, the archive building in Leeds. And it was a long, kind of tortuous process, sourcing everything from all over the country, from where it can easily be kind of, far south at Meridian TV or right in the north of England at Border. So coordinating all that was quite a task. And a lot of content was actually held with third-party storage facilities as well. So it wasn't all held within ITV sites. So identifying where everything was, a big project in itself. But over the years, we've centralized the physical archive here into Leeds, and with today around 1.2 million tapes on site and around 200,000 film cans. And the film actually, interestingly, predates ITV, because over the years, I think it was Carlton in the 90s that acquired Rank Films. So that's 800 or so movies, kind of the cream of British cinema, if you like. Our very earliest title dates back to 1927. It's a Hitchcock silent movie called Downhill. Stars Ivor Novello. So we've got a whole host of film titles from the 20s to the 90s, as well as this huge TV collection.
I mean, it's a massive undertaking. So, what does a typical day look like for you? I mean, what does your role incorporate?
Oh, there's no such thing as a typical day. That's the get out clause for the answer. But it's quite a big operation, and it's very central to a lot of other things we do. So, 'cause obviously, we're a producer, broadcaster, distributor. We do all those kind of different things, and the archive is central to a lot of that. So, let's say from a production side of things, production team want to access old stories or old clips of various shows, then we supply all that with an in-house digitization and film scanning facility. So if we have to supply anything, it has to go through the digitization or scanning process. So there's that kind of side of things as well. We also have a catalog operations team that enter all the metadata, particularly for new content coming in, but also for the legacy as well, to make sure that our metadata, our catalog is how it should be, and we've got really good data. We know what we've got, and we know what we can do with it. So my typical day is kind of running all of that sort of stuff, and we've got one or two big projects that we're currently either in flight or about to be. So big tape digitization project going on right now. That's a 2-year project to essentially digitize everything that we've got on tape, and then film will be a future phase. We're looking at film scanning, and in fact, last week we were looking at some new film scanners to not only tackle the kind of huge number of films that we've got to scan, but also what's the best possible quality that we can get. So yeah, we'll look at lots of different aspects of supplying archive content to, a business that, not only produces programs, but also distributes and broadcasts them as well. The broadcast delivery workflow, anything that's repeated, obviously has to come from the archive. So we're part of all that. We've got our finger in all kind of pies that you could possibly imagine when it comes to.
So, and yeah, I think you hit on the nail on the head. It's a commercial operation. So ultimately, who decides what gets archived? So let's imagine that a show, take us through a journey. Let's say we've got Love Island. For example, we have that show. It's been broadcast. How can you let us follow that journey from something being shown on TV to how it ends up in the archive?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's a lot easier now, Dom, than it used to be. When 10, 15 years ago, you're tracking down tape from production teams and they were sending all the rushes, hundreds of boxes worth of tapes that may or may never get used ever again. It was a completely different scenario as to what we have now. It's very much automated now. Our life is much, much easier. So anything that gets broadcast, it's almost pre-broadcast, it ends up in the archive, in the digital archive, because it's from there, from that repository, that we run our kind of broadcast workflows from, unless it's live content or really late delivery. So even though it's the archive, often we get the programs before they're even shown. And we have a whole host of people across ITV who's kind of ensuring that the content gets delivered, because we are part of that broadcast chain. So to ensure that people are meeting their contracted deliverable, if you like, to make sure that they say they're going to make a program and we're going to broadcast it. There's what we call content operations teams that manage the intake of that content to make sure that everything is delivered as per contract. We don't actually, from an archive perspective, we don't actually chase the assets anymore like we used to when it was all on tape. So we're quite lucky that way. And our policy is that anything that we make or distribute, then it goes into the archive, certainly for the period that we own the rights. So, for example, we may acquire a program and broadcast it for a year or two. It will be in the archive because that's where a lot of our kind of broadcast workflows originate. But at the point of the rights expiry, then we will either delete it or send it back to the producer, whatever we're kind of contracted to do. And also in terms of other content, kind of rushes or stock shots and things like that, then it's very much up to the production teams to decide if they want to archive it or not. Much of it doesn't get reused, and we're quite happy for that to kind of be ephemeral and not hit the archive. But if it is valuable, then we trust the production teams to make the right decisions about keeping that type of content. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. I mean, it's a complicated web of rights, obviously. We're just interested. Does that sort of mean that you then, because it's a digital workflow now, and is there any editorial decision making on, say, what you keep and what you don't, or you decide the rights side of things? Everything that's shot, say, by ITV, let's say rushes, for example, how would that be handled? Like, do you manage to keep rushes from production companies? Because I know ITV owns hundreds of production companies around the world. How is that workflow managed? That kind of content?
Well, when ITV, it's an interesting aside, really. When ITV acquire these different companies, as you say, Dom, they're all over the world. Kind of the rule is that we allow them to manage themselves as much as possible. So from an archive perspective, all we're interested in from them is the finished program. That's what we would expect it to have delivered. And when it comes to other material, then it's up to them if they want to send it to us to archive, or whether they want to keep it themselves in their own repositories or delete it. That's entirely up to them. And on a smaller scale, that's what we say to our own internal production teams as well. If they want to deposit it with us, then it's up to them. But the thing that, as an archive, that we're, the red line is really, we want the finished programs. That's the policy. And everything else is kind of a decision made between ourselves and the production teams. But we're very much guided by the production teams on that because, of course, we don't know what rushes they've filmed, and we don't know if it's valuable or not. We have to take their guidance on that. It tends to be increasingly that we don't take much in terms of rushes these days. I don't know why that is. But But it probably is something to do with the fact it's easy to store content within the production team, so they can create a hard drive, I guess, instead of having hundreds of tapes they need to kind of store somewhere. But I think it has to be said as well that over the years, when we've done our analysis on reuse of rushes, we can see it's only single figure percent is used or reused. Our kind of mantra is, if it's high value, then we want it. So let's say it's an interview with a prime minister or a Paul McCartney or Bowie or something, all that kind of stuff, that the crown jewels, then we expect that to be delivered. But it's very much up to the production teams to identify that, tell us about it, and then we're quite happy to archive it.
What happens, Andy, with like the different formats? So like Love Island goes out in the USA, goes out in France, it has an Australian version now. Do you keep all of those in the archive?
Yeah, we do. It's obviously we want a kind of record of output, but there's reuse now. So whether it's clip sales or whatever, most of our content is being reused, for one purpose or another. So, but yeah, we expect everything. We don't necessarily have the best workflows in terms of getting all of that content, particularly if it's Australia or the Nordics or Germany or somewhere. It is a bit of a kind of faff sometimes to get hold of that content, but yeah, we expect to have that in the archive.
So, just thinking about as my head goes, right? So you've got all this content coming in, right? We touched on it a little bit earlier. Metadata, so finding it and sourcing it and just kind of knowing what you've got. How is the information about a program, let's say you've taken an individual program for a production company, does that data come with it normally?
Yeah.
It does.
So when we commission content or when we acquire content, part of that commissioning and acquisition process is you don't only send the asset, and by that we really mean the digital file of the content that we expect. And we also expect metadata to go with it, and we have a metadata schema. That will be things like the title, the episode title, the cast and crew, and all that kind of catalog data that you'd expect to have in a archive search system. So yeah, the intake of data is very much attached to the intake of the asset. And my team, in terms of catalog operations, that's what they manage. They manage the intake of that. So they're the team that go chasing that data if it's not supplied with the asset. And they also modify the data as well if it doesn't come in quite the format or the level of detail or whatever we expect. Those guys manage that intake. And they also look after the legacy side of things as we continue to digitize. And as part of the digitization project is we're constantly finding things as well. So we're adding like new episodes. Sometimes if you find episodes, quite rare we do that. There's certainly new versions of things like that. So that team add all that data to the catalog so other people can find it and also so we know exactly what we've got as well.
So in terms of that digitization project, which is huge, I mean, archiving everything, how do you partner on that? How do you future-proof that to make sure you're holding stuff on a server that is going to last? Because I think that's an issue that comes up a lot when we talk to people in archives is legacy formats, digital servers, what sort of thinking goes into that process and how do you manage such a big thing? How do you even get it going?
It is a big thing, but it's not a standing start. Actually, we've done about a third of all tape. We chopped it into kind of phases. So phase one, we're looking at kind of videotape, and as I say, we've done about a third so far. But the rest of it, what we identified was it's blindingly obvious. Everybody knows this, but there's only so many machines and there's only so much time we've got to be able to do this. And so we wanted to accelerate what we were doing. We were doing it, but it was it's pretty slow. We have our own internal digitization facility, but our capacity is around 20,000 tapes a year because we have a lot of those things we talked about of getting content to people on the day, whether it be for a clip sale or whether it's for broadcast and all that kind of stuff. That's what we do, right? And to some extent, the digitization as a programmatic piece of work is something we do around the edges of the kind of everyday stuff. So we knew we needed to accelerate it. And as you say, Dom, when you're in that position, you kind of really need to find a good partner to work with. And we'd been working with Iron Mountain for a couple of years. we identified that there were certain formats that were more at risk than others. So things
what are
like
those?
U-matic is probably the easiest one, or the worst format I was talking about. So U-matic, we wanted to make sure that we weren't dependent on that as a format, if you like. We want to just kind of digitize it and just forget about it. So that's a project we did a few years ago, and we partnered with iMountain to do that because we only had a couple of U-matic machines in house. So we did that. We did D2 as well. ITV quite a lot of D2. Companies like LWT, for example, were very big on D2. So with quite a lot of content on that particular format. And again, just not very many machines within ITV existed. So we partnered with iMountain for that. And then when it came to the big digitization projects, obviously we kind of, with it being such a big project, it's got to go through the full procurement process. But I think that experience iMountain had working with us for a few years kind of saw them, he put them in good stead. And they had a really good proposal. So we work with iMountain for the next 2 years to basically, complete the videotape digitization piece. And then we're looking at film, which is going to be even bigger, I think.
It's
That's
a huge
huge.
one. I'm sorry. Go on.
No, that's huge. When you go through that, do you have a look at restoring some of that film content, or will it be just digitization?
It's a bit of both, Sandra. So we're going to be looking at, to be perfectly honest, I've still got to kind of really figure out what the strategies are around that. And the first thing we need to do is, it's not only what film is in scope. So what do we need to do? Things like rights and all that kind of stuff comes into it. But then with film in particular, what's our best asset? What's our best set of film for us to digitize from? Still yet to do that piece of work. I mean, we've got reasonable data, so it shouldn't be that difficult, but it's still a significant amount of work for us to be able to do that. And then, I think exactly what you said, Sandra, we need to decide whether we're going to just kind of run a factory process and kind of raw scan everything, or do we do that and restore? I think the answer is we're going to restore certain things at the point of kind of scanning, if you like, and then other things I think we'll leave till later and just kind of create a digital copy, the digital master that we can go back to and effectively create a preservation copy that we can restore and do whatever we want with further down the line. Time is ticking, and we just kind of want to kind of get it done as soon as possible and then circle back and do some more restoration. But also, we do have a restoration team in-house, and they want to get the teeth into some of particularly the film titles. Yeah. So I think we do both, but we've got to be quite selective about how we do it.
A quick question on that is, are you going to restore to 4K, or is that going to be
4K?
Okay, everything.
We're certainly going to be scanning to 4K, and then the restoration is, the best possible quality, output that we can get.
And a hard one. Are you going to junk the film afterwards, or are you going to keep it?
No, we're going to keep the film. There may be some thinning out we can do. Film that's really in bad condition, and then so if we've made a nice scan of it and the film's completely shot. Sometimes when we're scanning film, you kind of realize you got one pass at it. So maybe that can go by the wayside. And we have one of the things about ITV, one of the hallmarks of our archive is we have so much duplication. There's a particular title, Eagle Has Landed. So we all know that film, right? We have 546 cans for that one title. So
wow.
Yeah. I mean, lots of different versions, lots of different kind of localized language versions and stuff. But we know we've got far too much. And you see things written on cans such as US short version. Okay, but I don't know what that means. short as of, how much shorter and what does short mean? Do we have a long version? So within all that, I'm pretty sure there's some thinning out we can do. And that thing that I said earlier about finding our best asset, our best set of film, that's going to be the key thing to that whole project.
How do you do that, Andy? How do you find the best asset?
It's just sheer hard work, elbow grease and time. We'd like to think that the data can really guide us on what we've got. So we have a library management system called Media Pulse, which has lots of inherited data and new data that we've added to it over the years. This is for the physical archive, by the way. The digital is something different. So we do have data, but you guys have been in this business long enough to know, the older the data, the kind of worse, the more sketchy it is. Yeah. So there's plenty of gaps in the data. And I think the Eagles Landed is actually a really good example, actually, because what we did, I wanted to use it as kind of, this is as bad as it's ever going to get, right? We have nothing that's as complex as this in the archive. And so what we had to do was basically pull everything off the shelves, spread it all out on the floor, and then start to kind of put it into their different sets, and then identify what each set was, and then try to make a decision based on what we found out. But I have to say, we're still figuring that particular one out, and we've been at it a couple of months. So, so yeah, we're just going to have to just look at as much as we can, whether it's the data that we've got within the system or whether it's the labels. But, for some of it, we're just going to have to, stick it on a Steam back and take a look.
Can I ask you the questions, back to the U-matics, which we know are a dreadful format. Would you junk those as well? Because, that comes up a lot. Is the mantra just to always keep the element? I mean, surely that can't be commercially realistic.
No, as you say, we're a commercial enterprise, and we've got to kind of always think about the bottom line. So with film, there's something that we can do, but our principle is we're going to keep film. With tape, the thinking is we've not actually executed this, and we've got a couple of years yet before we have to make the decision, but our thinking is that we will dispose of tape once we've got a validated, fully QC'd file created from that tape. Things like U-matic, D2, I'm not even sure we've got a U-matic player anymore with it within. That's reason to keep it once it's been digitized, once we know it's a good copy. And and then that's why the kind of QC process is so important. It's not just a QC process to say, yes, everything's correct and it looks good. It's also to say it's good enough for us to never go back to the tape, right? So our thinking is right now that we're going to dispose of tape once we've done the full digitization QC and what we call a validation. So a validation isn't necessarily a technical QC. This is definitely the right thing that we think we've digitized. Sometimes our data's a bit sketchy. Sometimes even the labels are on, we think it's episode 1, but actually it's episode 2. So we're doing all that checking as well. So at the end of all that, we should have, at least as good a source kind of technical copy, and also a full kind of knowledge that it's the right thing that we've digitized. So that makes the disposal of tape decision a little bit easier, but I am kicking that can down the road a bit because I am an archivist and we like to keep things.
Honest to goodness, everybody we speak to has done the same thing. It's like nobody wants to be on the hook for junking any original formats,
Yeah. I think for as long as we can go without doing that, we won't. But the day will come, I'm sure, Dom, and hopefully we'll be in a really strong position to be able to say, do you know what, it's actually fine. Yeah.
And so just from my lay point of view, so when you talk about quality control, like, is that done in real time? And how, is that workflows literally somebody has to eyeball this nowadays, or is there AI integrated into that workflow? How does the quality control work?
Well, we're doing 3 things. And the first is it's an AQC, so an automated machine kind of doing the QC, so checking for levels and dropout and all that kind of stuff. So that's pretty good. And then we do a 5-point check. So that's someone kind of spooling through beginning, middle, end kind of thing. And that's industry standard. That's kind of, what we've done for years and years and years in terms of QC. And then we do that final validation. But part of that validation is also a kind of another set of eyeballs on it. It's not real time because we haven't got enough hours in the day to view hundreds of thousands of tapes over the next couple of years. But it's a pretty robust system that we've got. And also, just simple things like, using the broadcast masters and not, dub copies and all that kind of stuff. So ensuring that we're using the best possible asset to digitize. So you've got less kind of issue, going forward around, technical failure and stuff. Yeah. For me, it's less about technical failure. It's more about the right thing has been digitized. That's my worry. That's the thing that keeps me up at night because, with the AQC tools that we've got, they are robust. And then, with the kind of human eyeball checks as well, I don't worry too much about technical failure. It's more around we've digitized the wrong thing, or we think we've digitized something and it's not that. And then whenever the tape, gets recycled, we don't want to kind of get to that point and have made some mistakes. So we try and be as painstaking as possible, but still within the parameters of doing a lot per day, per year.
And, in terms of, so anybody that kind of is interested in getting into this world, looking to the future now. So as archives, everything's digitized, right? We've got these workflows in place. What skill sets do you see that are needed now? What areas do you find it hard to recruit? Because it's very specialized areas. What do you see for this archive over the next 10 years?
It's a really good question, and it's changed such a lot over the last 10 years. I mean, when I first started, everything was kind of tape-based. Film wasn't a kind of thing anymore, and people quite sniffy about film. Everyone loved a digibeta, and then it was HD tape. And it was really about a kind of a logistical role, making sure everything kind of got to where it needed to get to. And data wasn't so much a thing, because it was in everyone's heads and all that kind of stuff. But over the years, that's changed massively. Data is really the thing that drives everything. And even this kind of digitization project, is predicated on, doing it at kind of, en masse. Yeah, it's really much a data-driven project. It's difficult to make individual decisions, particularly when you're kind of selecting what we need to digitize. So, we got huge lists of thousands of tapes that we're working from to send off for digitization, and that's really kind of based on data. So data and data management is increasingly important. We're looking at AI a lot now as well. So one of the projects that we're looking at doing next year is getting AI to basically to create catalog data. So we have lots of gaps in our data, particularly the further you go back. And what the digitization work helps us to do is kind of the foundational work for us to be able to do cool things like AI analysis. And the things that the products that we're looking at now are really around backfilling catalog data. So creating short, medium, long synopses, finding the casting credits, looking at copyright lines, and getting all that data into the catalog, but on a kind of automated way, and doing it at scale. So I would probably say data, AI, kind of key things to think about going forward. I also think that in the next few years, kind of tape will stop being so much a thing, but film scanning and film restoration is going to be around for a long time. So those are skills that I think people will certainly need. And also from my perspective, just kind of technical know-how on how digital assets are managed, so how our digital workflows kind of built. What do we do in terms of storage? What's our policy around digital storage and all that kind of stuff? So technical know-how is a real thing. Part of what we're doing at ITV right now in terms of the archive is to move to kind of a cloud storage model. And there's lots to learn about how we get it into the cloud for a start. So quite lucky at ITV that we have technical teams dedicated to this kind of thing. So I don't have to know that much about it. We have experts in-house who do all that. But I certainly think if you're getting into the archive sort of sector, that know-how is increasingly essential.
How many people are in your team, Andy?
I have 15 people in my team, and it's roughly 5-5-5. So 5 people looking at archive research and making sure that the content gets to where it needs to get to. 5 people working in digitization, and 5 people working in our catalog operations team.
That's just super helpful advice there. I was thinking just very quickly, how did you get into this, Andy? What's your background?
I completely fell into it. So my girlfriend at the time worked for ITV. She worked in news, and I'd finished university. I had no clue what to do, but I thought she had a really cool job. Telly sounded something that was kind of working, in a kind of buttons factory or something. And then she came home one night and she said, "Oh, there's a job going in the library downstairs. Is that something you'd like to do?" I thought, well, it's a way to get into telly, and I'm not doing anything else. So I came for the easiest interview I've ever had, or ever will have, because my old boss was basically like, "When can you start?" And they just needed someone to just to kind of get tapes out to the broadcast and get a list and of what was being broadcast, in 6 weeks' time. Get all the tapes together and then send them to the different broadcast centres. And that was my job when I first started. And it was on a 6-month temporary contract. And I had kind of highfalutin ideas about being a documentary filmmaker, which I have to say, after about 2 hours of working in the library, I realised this is what I wanted to do.
Oh, that's amazing.
I just absolutely loved it. And it was so fast paced. There was just so much going on, deadlines all the time. And it was an adrenaline rush. And it's changed a lot now, but I still get that feeling every day of I'm doing something that's really love doing it. Before, I would say, because this is sort of over 20 years ago, by the way. And archiving wasn't really a thing. It was all about just kind of motoring the broadcast kind of side of things. That's what we did in the library. But over the years, we've become this resource for basically all the business, all of ITV's different areas have to plug into it. And we've become kind of, our stature has increased over the years. And really now we see ourselves as, our role now, or my role now, is really about ensuring that the legacy's kind of in place. So, I guess what I want to kind of achieve is to have a fully digitized, fully preserved, easily accessible, easily kind of findable, discoverable library that is just there at everyone's fingertips, and it's all there. There's no gaps. It's all done perfectly. That's what I want to do. Yeah.
Well, that's it's wonderful to hear, and it's amazing because, that's what we dream of, and it's huge kudos to you for even being able to take it on. And more to ITV as well for trying to make it happen. It's not easy.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, the difference that 10, 15 years ago, that the archive or the library was seen as something that was there, that wasn't necessarily there to invest in, there to kind of, really kind of secure and look after. That's completely changed. And we're seen as, I would say, ITV's main asset. And we get the kind of support, we need now. Whereas I would say, 10, 15 years ago, that wasn't necessarily the case.
Yeah.
Any disasters, Andy, in the archive ever?
Yeah, well, the worst thing that happened, I would say, was the flood we had in 2015. So it's about 10 years ago. And it was horrible. It was Boxing Day night. So I had quite a nice Boxing Day, bit of a party. Got a call, I think it was about 3 a.m, from security saying that water was coming into the archive. And we'd been, I will say, flooded once before, and some water had got in under some roller shuttered doors, and had done nothing but clean the floor. It wasn't a flood. It cleaned the floor. It was quite, it wasn't a disaster. So I was a bit angry. I was a bit like, oh, they've called me at 3, just for this. It's fine. Get the cleaners in. They're in tomorrow. It'll be fine. But of course, I had to kind of see for myself. So I drove into the city and, tried to. So I got to the road where the archive is situated, and it was a river. And I thought, oh gosh, okay, this is different from before. So I managed to wend my way down the back streets and got to the archive building. There's probably about 3 inches of water. It's quite a lot because it's a big kind of floor space. So 3 inches is a lot of water. And I was thinking, oh my God. So I called the fire brigade, and luckily for us, they're literally like 4 or 5 doors down from where we're situated. It's pure fluke that, that's the way, it so happened. So within about an hour, they were able to kind of set up the pumps and start pumping the water out. So it could have been a complete disaster if we weren't so close to the fire service. Very few items were damaged. It was more from people walking through the water and the water then splashing onto a shelf.
Oh.
That was more, so nothing was really saturated. But we sent a few things off to specialists to dry out, but it wasn't too bad. The worst thing, actually, it wasn't damage to the tape or the film. 0.99% of it was fine. It was the flooring. So we had kind of chipboard kind of bases on the racking and stuff like that. So all the flooring had to come up. So it was about a year to kind of replace all that and make it good. Yeah, it was a bit of a disaster, but it could have been much more worse.
I think we just, that's amazing. I mean, it's fantastic. We appreciate your time. Should we do our little quickfire thing, Sandra?
Yeah, but before we start that, can I just ask, what are the hidden gems in the catalogue? I mean, I want to know what you think are the hidden gems, because I know what I think are the hidden gems.
Well, all right, it'd be interesting to know
Compare
what you.
notes.
Did you hear a few years ago we found that missing series of the complete and utter history of Britain? So it was almost the precursor to Monty Python. Michael Palin, Terry Jones did this sketch show for LWT in 69, 68, 69. And only 2 episodes were thought to exist. The network actually released those 2 episodes, but thinking the other 4 have gone. We found those hidden in plain sight. They were just kind of miscatalogued, but they were there all the time on the shelf. But that kind of
That's awesome.
goes to show how much the data kind of, is how important it is, because if it's miscatalogued, it's missing. And so that was really good to find that. And it's quite a rare thing, because even though data is a bit sketchy, the further you go back, usually you've got a title and you kind of know what you've got, right? You might not know all the detail about it, but you know what. So that was a really good one. But we've got so many cool things, whether, I like my football and seeing, 66 World Cup, on film. And that's always a good thing to see. Or, that great interview with Brian Clough, and when he was manager of Leeds or just being sacked. Great TV. You don't get anything like that these days. But I'm a big aficionado I love a quiz show. There's not enough of them around. Things like 3, 2, 1 and Bullseye. Love all that. Cheesy TV.
Fantastic.
Should we do the archive spotlight round? Quick questions, 1-word answers, and you
Gosh, okay.
see how you get on. Okay, so archive or digital?
Archive.
What has your heart?
Archive. What did you say? So,
Archive or digital? What has your heart?
archive, definitely.
Okay. Weirdest thing you found in a tin, a film tin?
Now, I know what Joe Griffin said for this.
It's hard to top.
I actually saw them.
You got to top it.
Do you know what? I remember once opening a can of sound, and everything was basically, it was so deteriorated. It was just dust. That was interesting. All right,
Wow.
Blimey, you've got to look after your film. It wasn't from here, by the way. It was something that was sent to us, but yeah, gosh.
Clip that gives you goosebumps.
The towers coming down. So there's a program called 9/11: The Firefighter's Story, and is a documentary filmmaker from Anglia TV called Paul Berriff, who was in New York filming Animal Cops. Remember that?
Yeah.
Yeah. And he was in a police station, and he heard on the radio or something that there'd been a terrorist attack at the 2 towers. And being the consummate journalist that he was, he dropped everything, went with his soundman to the 2 towers, and went in the car, parked as close as he could to get there, went on foot the rest of the way, and literally captured the moment the towers came down.
Wow.
And you see the camera just turn and run, because he's like, right, got to get out of here. That, I've never seen anything like it. And Paul actually came up to look at the rushes with me, because we were cataloguing it all. And he was telling me this story, and it was fascinating.
It's so interesting. Wow. I've watched that program, and it's heartbreaking to watch, just seeing the terror in his voice as well.
Yeah.
If reels could talk, what would they say?
Digitize me.
Good answer.
Most underestimated part of archive work?
Cataloguing.
What if you could take one archive project to a desert island, which would it be?
What do you mean by archive project, Sandra?
Well, if an archive reel, if you could take one of those reels with you, one.
Oh, right. Coronation Street, episode 1. I've seen it so many times, because it's just the job, you just end up seeing like the iconic stuff.
Yeah.
But I just love it. It's an amazing snapshot of a time that even I didn't. I'm too young even to remember that. But I just love it. That northern kitchen sink drama. It's amazing.
Have you digitized that one, or is that still in the can?
No, that's digitized. I mean, we broadcast that quite a lot. It's on ITVX right now.
Really? Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Well, thank you so much. Yes, Andy, thank you so much for your time and your generosity with that. I think that was fascinating. So we really appreciate it. And we'll come back and keep in touch over the years as the digitization progresses and see
Yep.
where you guys are at. But yeah, thanks ever so much for joining.
Thank you.
You've been listening to The Archive Room, the stories behind the footage.